Okay, years 7 and 8. So hopefully you should have all completed lesson 1 in this new series of lessons on comprehension. This is lesson 2, and in this lesson we're looking at an extract from The Iron Man by Ted Hughes. Now, as always, we're going to start with a knowledge retrieval quiz. Now, some of these things are things that you're retrieving from last lesson, and some of these things are things you're retrieving from your previous studies in English. So question number 1 is, what is comprehension? Question number 2 is, what is inference? Question number 3 is, what is a stage direction? Question number 4 is, what is the difference between fiction and non-fiction? And question number 5 is, what is a connotation? Give yourself 5 minutes, write down your answers, then we're going to move on to the next slide to check and green pen your answers. Okay, so as always with knowledge retrieval, I'm going to talk you through the answers. If you got it correct, give yourself a big tick. If you didn't get it correct, please make sure you write the correct answer down in your green pen. So question number 1, comprehension is our understanding of a text, okay? It is what we can understand from what we read, our understanding of a text. Number 2, an inference is when we read between the lines to work out the meaning. So as I said, if you see someone crying, you can of course infer that they are upset. If you see somebody sighing, you may be able to infer that they have had a bad day. Number 3, a stage direction is an instruction in a play to show how it should be performed. Number 4, a fictional text is made up and created by the author. It is not true. Whereas a non-fiction text is based on truth and events which have really happened. And of course, number 5, a connotation is something you think of when you hear a word. I hope 7x5 you got number 5 correct, because you promised me you would never forget. Right, okay, so moving on into this lesson then. So as I said, just a bit slow there and to going over to the next slide. As I said, we are continuing to looking at our comprehension skills and our inference skills. Now, in this extract from The Iron Man, which is a Ted Hughes novel, the Iron Man sees the sea for the first time. Now, as I did in the last lesson, I'm going to read this extract to you. But as always, please read along with me, and please use a ruler to follow on, just as you would in class. You will have been sent these either in the post or via the Sims portal. So this extract is from the beginning of the novel, and the Iron Man, the creature, is seeing the sea for the first time. So the Iron Man came to the top of the cliff. How far had he walked? Nobody knows. Where had he come from? Nobody knows. How was he made? Nobody knows. Taller than a house, the Iron Man stood at the top of the cliff. On the very brink, in the darkness, the wind sang through his fingers. His great iron head, shaped like a dustbin, as big as a bedroom, slowly turned to the right, slowly turned to the left. His ears turned this way, that way. He was hearing the sea. His eyes, like headlamps, glowed white, then red, then infrared, searching across the sea. Never before had the Iron Man seen the sea. He swayed in the strong wind that pressed against his back. He swayed forward on the brink of the high cliff. And his right foot, his enormous iron right foot, lifted up, out, into space. And the Iron Man stepped forward off the cliff into nothingness. Crash! Down the cliff the Iron Man came toppling head over heels. Crash! 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 From rock to rock, snag to snag, tumbling slowly as he crashed and crashed and crashed. His iron legs fell off. His iron arms broke off, and hands broke off the arms. His great iron ears fell off, and his eyes fell out. His great iron head fell off. And the separate pieces tumbled, scattered, crashing, bumping, clinging down on the rocky beach below. A few rocks tumbled with him. Then silence, only the sound of the sea chewing away at the edge of the rocky beach, where the birds and pieces of the Iron Man lay, scattered far and wide, silent and unmoving. Only one of the iron hands lying beside an old sand-logged, washed up seaman's boot, waved its fingers for a minute like a crab on its back, then it lay still, while the stars went on wheeling through the sky, and the wind went on tugging at the grass on the cliff top, and the sea went on booming and booming. Nobody knew the Iron Man had fallen. Night passed. Right, okay, so today's lesson is a little bit different, a little bit more advanced than the previous lesson. And that is because we're looking at analysis as well as inference. Now, I know you are already brilliant at analysis because you have done loads of analysis with me and Mrs. Christie in your lessons, okay? But analysis, just to remind ourselves, is where we zoom in on a specific language technique and explore the effects of that language technique on the reader. So, this is a higher level skill and one that we want to begin to develop further in this lesson. So we've got this quote here, on the brink, in the darkness. So he's in the darkness. The Iron Man is on the top of the cliff when it is dark. And the wind is really loud and it is singing, the personification, the wind is singing through his iron fingers. Why do you think Hughes chooses to use the pathetic fallacy of darkness and wind to set the scene? How does that create a sense of foreboding? What does it suggest is going to happen? Then I want you to look between lines 5 and lines 10, just as I've highlighted here. And I want you to find two similes. Now remember, as a simile is where we say something is like or as something else. And I want you to find two similes that describe the Iron Man's appearance. Then I want you to look at these bits here, which are highlighted in blue. And I want you to think about the connotations of the word crash. And what does it suggest about the Iron Man's fall? And then I want you to look at this description of him. Why is the word great repeated? What are the connotations of great? And why is his appearance described as being great? And then I want you to look at the very end. Now remember, pathos is when language makes us feel sorry for a character. So pathos, that where language makes us feel sorry for a character, how does the ending make us feel pathos for the Iron Man? And why does it make us want to read on? Right, okay, you need to answer all of those questions. Please send your answers either via email or take a photo of them and send them via email to either me or Mrs. Christie, depending on who your classroom teacher is. We can't wait to see all of the brilliant work that you are doing this week. And then, finishing off, what have I learned this lesson? What have you achieved this lesson? Well, you've learned what analysis is, and specifically how analysis is slightly different to inference and comprehension, but how you must be able to infer and comprehend before you can analyse. You've looked again at the effects and symbolism of pathetic fallacy. You've looked at defining a range of language techniques and analysing their effect on the reader, and you've began to even think about how writers structure their texts. You should of course develop your comprehension skills further of a fictional text, and you should have also developed your ability of analysis and developed your analysis of language techniques, which you will have been working on with me and Mrs. Christie before. Have a wonderful week, and I will look forward to seeing you next week with our next comprehension lesson.